Test. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Southgate Planning Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 18th, and I will call this meeting to order at 6:30. Vice Chair Valenzuela, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, please stand up. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Chairperson Prieto,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Valenzuela,
Present.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Present.
I have Commissioner Ruiz. Wow, thank you.
Moving on to our consent calendar. Did my colleagues have an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? We have 3 sets of meeting minutes, July 7th, July 13th, and July 21st. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, I do have a quick comment. Actually, Madam Clerk, if you can you make a note of this for the record? The meeting minutes for July 7th, I believe it's page 7 on the agenda packet. The chairperson name needs to be corrected to reflect that I was the chairperson. It still says Lisette Ruiz on it, and I believe that was my first meeting. Those were the meeting minutes for July 7th. That's the only.
We can correct that. Apologies for that.
Thank you. Aside from that, I don't have anything else. Can I get a motion to approve meeting minutes?
Are you going to open it up for a public comment?
For meeting minutes? Sure.
for anyone here.
Do we have someone? Do we have someone online? If there's anyone on Zoom who's interested in speaking, can you raise your hand on Zoom? Thank you. Bringing it back to my colleagues, can I get a motion to approve meeting minutes?
This is Liz. I so move.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Valenzuela,
Yes.
Chairperson Prieto.
Yes.
Thank you.
Since we have no public hearing on the agenda today, I will go ahead and move to the open session items. Do we have a presentation today?
We do have presentations, yes. Are we at item 8A?
Yes.
Okay. I could,
Before we move on to that, I will say that we do have our translator here today. We don't have anyone in the audience, but thank you for being here today.
okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, item 8A is a city finance update. It's an update on the city's finances. We'll pass it on to our director, Louis. And I'll pass it on to you.
That's the other one.
Thank you. So my name is Louis Froster. I'm the Director of Administrative Services. I oversee finance. And so today I'm going to be presenting or walk through a presentation of the city's budget reductions and what they mean operationally. This is a modified version of the presentation that the council received on August 11th. The financial picture is the same. What I've changed is the emphasis, because several of the reductions land directly on the work that comes before this commission. I'm going to be direct with you. This is not a comfortable presentation. I'd rather you hear the constraints from me tonight than discover them in a project 6 months from now. So we're going to go over 4 parts here. First, how we got here, where the city's money actually comes from and what drove our cost up. Second, citywide reductions that the council directed. Third, what residents will experience. And then I'll spend most of the time on the first part because the revenue structure is the thing that explains everything else. Next slide. So how we got here. I want to start by dismantling the common assumption, which is that the city controls the taxes residents pay. We largely don't. There's 3 numbers on this slide. Of every dollar of property tax collected in Southgate, 6.15 cents stays with the city. The rest goes to the county, school district, and special districts. On sales tax, the city share is 2%, $2 of every 100 spent, while the full rate charged here is 10.75%. And so of that, roughly 2% comes to us. On a utility users tax, we collect nothing, although every single city around us collects one. Next slide, please. So when someone asks why the city can't simply raise revenue to solve this, that's the answer. Most city services are funded out of a small slice of taxes that our residents are already paying. Here's the general fund in fiscal year 26-27. The general fund is a portion of our budget that has discretionary spending attached to it, meaning the council can just decide where to spend this money. Although our all funds budget is about $180 million, only $68 million of that is general fund. Sales tax is $27.5 million, about 40%. Property tax is $19.4 million, which is about 28%. Everything else, business licenses, franchise fees, hotel taxes, permits, fines, rents, is about $21.3 million, or 31%. The number I want you to hold on to is that 68.8%. Roughly 7 of every 10 general fund dollars comes from just 2 taxes. That concentration is our single largest financial risk. And here's why. Sales tax is the first revenue to fall in a recession. We experienced that this year. It's tied to consumer spending, car sales, and warehouse activity. When the economy turns, it turns first, and it turns hard. A city that depends on sales tax for 40% of its budget has very little cushion. Next slide, please. So there's 2 separate 1% taxes that make up that $27.5 million. The Bradley Burns portion is $13.6 million. It goes to the city where the sale physically happens. That's the store, the dealership, the warehouse. If a retailer closes or relocates out of Southgate, that revenue leaves with it. This is the piece that connects directly to your work. Land use decisions, what we permit, what we retain, and what we attract, that's the line item. Measure P is $14 million. It was voter approved in 2008, and it's tied to the delivery address rather than the seller. So an online purchase delivered to a Southgate address generally generates Measure P revenue, even when the seller's in another state. So typically, the Measure P portion is higher than the Bradley Burns portion. You'll notice that on the slide. The Bradley Burns portion is $13.6 million, where the Measure P is $14 million. That difference at $400,000 is tied directly to online sales. So now the critical point. Combined here, the tax rate is 10.75%. That's the maximum the state law allows in LA County. There's no room to add sales tax to close a general fund gap. That tool is gone. Due to Measure ER, which was recently passed by LA County, the sales tax is going to go up to 11.25% in October of 26. That extra 0.5% is going to the county. The city of Southgate gets nothing of that portion. Next slide, please. Of every dollar of property tax collected here, the county takes 27 cents. LAUSD, about 21 cents. Educational augmentation, another 22 cents. The Consolidated Fire District, 16 cents. Community College and Library Districts, 9 cents. The city of Southgate, listed on the county's allocation as District 1, keeps 6.15 cents. So when property values rise, the city's share moves about 6 cents on the dollar. The other 94 cents funds the county, schools, and special districts, and we cannot redirect any of it. Development helps our finances, but through sales tax and fees, far more than property tax. Property tax, on average, increases only 2% per year. Next slide, please. So this is the comparison. Most of our neighboring cities levy a utility users tax. Southgate does not. I'm here tonight not advocating for one. I'm showing you this because it explains why our neighbors have absorbed cost pressures that we could not. Even then, all of our neighbors are struggling. They have a revenue source that we don't have, yet they're in a similar situation that we are in. When you compare service levels across cities in the area, the difference is a large part of the explanation. Next slide, please. How we got here. For 6 consecutive years, costs have grew faster than revenue. 2 things on the right that I want to name plainly. The $34.5 million in federal pandemic relief carried our operating costs for several years. That money is spent, but the cost it was covering did not go away. We were, in effect, using one-time money to fund ongoing operations. And when it ran out, the underlying gap was very visible. Second, this is not the first round of cuts. We've already reduced $9.3 million over 2 budget years, and budgeted positions went from 348 down to 312. We have used $2.25 million of reserves to close the gap this year. None of what follows is about waste or a single bad decision. These are cost increases the city does not set and cannot decline to pay. Next slide, please. Here are the 4 we can name and quantify. Comparing fiscal year 2019-20 to fiscal year 26-27, our unfunded pension liability grew from $6.1 million to $11.1 million, and that's an increase of $5 million. Our health insurance went from $5 million to $7.1 million, which is an increase of $2.1 million. Insurance went from 1.9 million to 5.8 million. That's an increase of 3.9 million. And this is the single fastest growing line on the page. The street lighting and landscaping subsidy is about $500,000 this year. Total, we went from 13.6 million in these 5 categories to 25.1 million. An increase of 11.5 million when you compare it from 2019-20 to 26-27. General fund revenue does not grow that fast. On average, our general fund revenue grows 2% per year. On the right, the costs that never show up as a headline, CPI escalators that are baked into most of our contracts, energy and fuel, which outpaces general inflation. I'm sure at home, we're feeling the pinch with the fuel costs as well. Software renewals tend to increase between 5 and 15% a year, which is simply the market. And we have new state and federal mandates that add staff time, requirements, and reporting costs without added funding. We call these unfunded mandates. This is the answer to, if you made all of these cuts, why is the budget still tight? Well, because the cost basis rises every year, whether we cut or not. Next slide. The financial reality. There's 3 numbers here. 9.4 million. That's the structural gap that was identified in October 2025. 1.52 million. That is the only funds remaining in our budget stabilization reserve, down from 3.77 million a year ago. There's 13 million in the emergency reserve, but this is the legally mandated minimum, and it's been deliberately left untouched. The word that matters here is structural. This is not a timing problem or a 1-year shortfall. Ongoing costs exceed ongoing revenues, which means the gap returns every year until something changes on one side of the equation. The fiscal year 26-27 budget is technically balanced, but it is not structurally balanced. And with no new ongoing revenue in place, reductions took effect July 1st. Next slide, please. Which brings me to what actually was cut. Next slide. In April, the council directed 9.4 million in ongoing reductions to close the gap without new revenue. These were built into the adopted budget and took effect July 1st, 2026. There's four characteristics worth emphasizing. Positions were eliminated across City Hall, Public Safety, Parks, and Public Works. Programs were eliminated, not paused. Special events and school crossing guards were among them. Service levels were reduced with longer response times and less availability. And these are permanent base budget reductions, not 1-year savings. And that's the last point, is the one I want to underline, which is nothing here is scheduled to come back on its own. Next slide, please. Here's the allocation, how the cuts were divided. Police had a budgeted target reduction of 3.44 million. Parks and Rec had a targeted reduction of 2.31 million. Public Works had a targeted reduction of 1.27 million. Community Development, 1.16 million. Administrative Services, 0.42 million. Human Resources, 0.27 million. Administration and others, 0.46 million. Together, we achieved a reduction of 9.33 million, which is very close to the 9.4 target. I want to flag the community development line for the commission specifically, because that's the 1.16 million is the number that will show up in these projects that you review. They have a direct impact on the community development's ability to provide services. And I'm sure the community development director will go over these later. Next slide, please. This is the operational reality across all departments. I'll go through it, but I want to dwell on the middle item on the right. On public safety, emergency response goes from an average of 4 minutes and 35 seconds to over 6 minutes. Wait times for an officer on non-emergency calls exceed an hour. Nuisance and quality of life calls are no longer answered. Crossing guards are gone at 37 sites. On Public Works, graffiti removal now stops Friday through Sunday, and response extends from 24 hours to about a week. Tree trimming moves from a 4-year cycle to a 5-year cycle. The streetlight crew drops to 5 people. On parks, the pool operates 8 months instead of year-round. The golf courses closes Mondays and Tuesdays. The cultural arts division is eliminated, and park lighting goes dark November 20th through March 31st. Now, community development, which is your world. Freezing one senior planner position means administrative projects go from 30 days to 60 days or 90 days to 150 days. Small discretionary projects go up in time from 9 months to 12 months. The large discretionary projects can even go up to 18 months. Freezing code enforcement means compliant investigation goes essentially unanswered. I want to set an honest expectation with the commission. Those timelines are not a forecast or a worst case. These are the operating realities of current staffing levels. When an applicant asks why their project is taking longer, or when a resident asks why a code complaint is sitting, this is the reason. I'd ask you to keep in mind as items come before you and to help us set realistic expectations with applicants rather than absorb that pressure at the counter. Next slide, please. That's the picture. The reductions in front of you closed a $9 million gap without new revenue. They did it by reducing what the city does. I don't think anyone involved would describe this as a solution. It's a stabilization. The structural question is still open. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. At this time, I'll open it up to the audience. Do we have any audience questions? Seeing none, I'll close the audience portion and move on to Zoom. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We have Mr. Mario Dominguez.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me read this email that I sent out this past weekend to the council members. After a year's worth of city council meetings having to do with the utility user tax and the city's budget, we the residents are still being subjected to more budget-related presentations. In the past year, our city hall has extensively covered this topic, yet our idiot-brained city manager, Rob I'm a fucking disaster Houston, still insists on putting us all through these torturous budget-related presentations. Why? It's just more vomit. He's just regurgitating revised/updated versions of the same information that he has already previously shared with us. Now he has rebranded them as staff reduction presentations, but it's the same fucking shit. What is he trying to accomplish with all of these big, lengthy presentations? Why? We are barely in the new fiscal year, and already he is starting to drown us all in budget presentations. Now it is starting to spill over into our commission meetings. For this Tuesday's Planning Commission meeting, there will be a presentation on how the financial crisis has impacted the Community Development Department. Another fucking budget presentation? What the hell for? This is too fucking much. Once we get done with all of these department reduction presentations, then he'll want to do a quarter-year budget presentation in October. It is simply unending with these presentations. Let me just end with that. Mr. Fausto, I want to commend you and the job you've been doing for the past year. You really have been tremendous. I can only imagine how maddening this must be for you, having to constantly, every single month, every single council meeting, it's another presentation. And I imagine it's going to be like this till who knows when. But you didn't have a conversation with Mr. Houston because there was a resident at the last city council meeting, Thomas Chicken Shit Buckley. He used the word demoralizing. It is completely demoralizing to have to sit through these presentations and see how your city hall has no money. Our council members are going about this the wrong way. We had the National Night Out two weeks ago. They should have had a booth there with you in Houston doing a presentation explaining to those folks the financial crisis and why we desperately need the utility user tax. The information is great. The presentations have been great, but the approach is what's wrong. You guys are preaching to the choir. What our city needs to do is reach out to the folks outside of our city hall building. They're the ones that need to know. They're the ones that need this information. Us, we already know this stuff. But you've been great, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, but the approach has got to change. This is just too much for us. I'm going to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else on Zoom?
We have no other.
Did you say no other?
No other.
I'll go ahead and close the Zoom portion. Do we have any emails?
No emails.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open it up to my colleagues. Do you have any questions? Go ahead.
So when you talk about where our tax dollars go, how do the feds, how does our money trickle down to the feds? I didn't see that mentioned.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Because you mentioned that a lot of our tax dollars go to the county,
It's a state and county. Yeah.
state and county. So then is what the federal government gets from each state just directly billed to the state itself? Like it's not something that our
So the
taxes-
federal government is mostly funded through taxes that we pay directly. So federal taxes.
The federal taxes. Oh, so none of our local taxes go to
No.
that. Got it. And then the other question I had was about, or just clarifying on page 6, when you mentioned the street lighting, that's just what we pay to the street lighting fund because of the shortfall, correct?
That's correct. That's a subsidy. The subsidy varies year over year, but the subsidy is a little more complicated than I think at face value. The subsidy comes in two ways. There is the direct general fund subsidy, which is really what we're talking about here. And then there's the subsidy happening from other restricted funds that could be used for other things, but qualify to be used for lighting and landscaping issues. And so that money is redirected towards that purpose.
So like grants and stuff like that.
That's
might
right.
Be
So-
applicable to.
Yeah, so if the grant or funding source allows for money to go towards lighting or landscaping, we're pulling some of that money in order to subsidize this further. All in, we're still doing the math, but when you combine the general fund subsidy and the subsidy coming from other restricted funds, it's looking to be about 2.3 million total
2.3 million a year.
a year in subsidies.
That's good to know because I think that's something that a lot of residents don't know, that how much we're not paying into something that's so needed in our city. And I've been somebody that's complained about the tree trimming cycle and has constantly advocated to not do that because of the health of the trees, that, it's, their quality gets worse.
Right.
and it's a liability for the city. But I mean, if there's no money, then what do we do? And I think that's something that people really need to understand, that fund has been, and that's something we property owners pay into, and we just haven't been paying because it would take another vote, correct? By the residents?
Right. What the residents pay, what the homeowners pay, I should say, hasn't gone up in 30 years.
30 years.
When the lighting and landscaping district was passed or was implemented, it was actually implemented before voter approval was required. That came later. And the way it was set up, there was no like CPI kind of increase tied to it. It was actually it is tied to the size of your, like the front of your home. So it's based on the area. I know that our homes don't grow every year. I wish they did. We would have a mansion at some point. But because it's tied to the size of your property, it's fixed essentially. And so that hasn't gone up. And so it is one of the items that we are working to develop options for the council on. But that's something that would, as a result of Prop 218, will require voter approval if we are going to make a change to the funding of the lighting and landscaping business.
And when you talk about property taxes, I haven't been a homeowner for that long, so I'm not really sure, but I vaguely remember my dad complaining about house values being reassessed. Is that something that's solely done when homes are refinanced, or is that something that the city can require?
So Proposition 13 actually set a bunch of restrictions related to property taxes. It capped them. And the reason that came about is because there used to be a lot of unpredictability for homeowners in what they would pay for taxes. So Proposition 13 was intended to provide some level of stability so that homeowners can at least anticipate what they were going to pay. Because of the way that's structured, we only see a reassessment on the value of a home really in the two main reasons. One, the property sells, or you buy it. Or two, if there's large construction or redevelopment of that property. That's when a reassessment happens, and we can obviously start collecting a little bit more than what we were before. But the vast majority of the properties, the most we can get in an increase per year is 2%.
Got it. And the other thing I wanted to say was just that I disagree. I think that these presentations are good because I regularly see comments either online or even at current council meetings with people who maybe haven't been as engaged as other residents, and learn a lot about what the situation is in our city. And I think it's great that we are focusing this on our department, because it gives us insight as commissioners to know and understand why, or things aren't moving maybe as fast as we wish they would. I was kind of hoping to hear that from this presentation. I don't know if you could talk about some of the people who have left already voluntarily, because I know you mentioned just staffing freezes. How many of those have there been? How many have left?
Well, besides the reduction in FTE count, there, and the human resources director touched on this, there has been an increase in the difficulty in recruiting. We've seen a drastic drop in the amount of applicants that are interested in positions with the city. We've also seen key folks in our organization that have accepted positions in other agencies, some of which have not even been announced yet and will be announced soon. So the exodus might be a strong word, but there is an increase in folks looking to leave. And the primary drivers of that is really a desire for stability. A lot of us have family or folks that depend on us, and the fact that we just don't know where we're going to be 6 months from now, or even 4 months from now, is unnerving to a lot of people. What I will say, which is not in the presentation, but it is implied, is that without a significant increase in revenue, whether that comes from UT or some other source, there is going to be more cuts. The projected deficit for next year, based on preliminary numbers, is $4 million. That's $4 million in additional cuts on top of the $9.4 million. The $9.4 million really decimated some key programs. What you will find if additional cuts are made is a further degradation of the services that residents expect. And at some point, the council can plug the hole, so to speak, with reserves, but that is unsustainable and it would not be my recommended approach.
And there's limits even to that. I mean, you can't just deplete the funds. There's a limit up to how low you can get, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this, and my heart goes out to all of you. I mean, a lot of this was foreseeable when these budget discussions started. I still hold resentment that we didn't vote on this already, because every other city passed whatever tax they had on their ballot, this last go around in June. And so, yeah, I think it's sad that we weren't able to try then. I personally feel like even if it wasn't enough on as high as of tax we needed, it at least would have prevented some of these drastic measures that we've taken. And I know that I appreciate the length of the presentation, but I know that there's a lot more things that have been cut or are foreseen to be cut. In my heart, I know the Halloween hunt isn't happening And I mean, it's not something the city needs, so I totally understand, but it's still, it's still sad for all the kids who enjoy it every year. And
Agreed.
as parents, but if it means we get to keep more staff in city services, I think that's definitely the most important part. But I think it's good for us to know, for my colleagues to really, get these numbers in our head, because a lot of people don't know. Today there was a bunch of comments on Facebook on the Facebook community pages, asking why the crossing guards are cut. And, where did the money go? Where did the money go? And, I tell people, go to the website and see for yourself. And, people are like, wow. 'Cause, it's all there. It's been there. Like the caller said, we've been talking about it nonstop. So
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So the UUT will be in the November ballot,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
And if that does pass, then this would kind of place on hold I'm sure it's not going to replace what we already lost, but it would freeze some of those closures, layoffs for the future.
Right. The anticipated revenue that would be brought in, we're not going to see it immediately. I want to set realistic expectations. Assuming that this passes in November, we probably won't see the money until March or April of the following year. So that likely that's almost a full fiscal year. And so I think if the council decided to bridge that 1 year with reserves, I think that would be something that makes sense to do, to have to prevent making extensive cuts again. But the idea is that this revenue will allow the city to begin restoring services, but doing so in a way that's fiscally responsible and that prioritizes the key services that the residents need and want.
I have a question, Luis. On the last page where it says resident impact highlights, is that already happening? I wasn't familiar with a lot of this, so I didn't know that some of the stuff on here, is this stuff that's already going on, the cuts
Yes.
that are already in
These
effect?
cuts were already implemented.
So I must agree with our caller on how some of this information is related to our community. Are we having some type of like town hall or sharing this information in Spanish?
So we do have a website, and there are translated versions of presentations on there. So yes, there is some information going out. There are educational flyers and brochures that are in both English and Spanish. One of the caller mentioned the National Night Out, and there was significant discussions on this topic at the stops that were made. So there is an effort being made. One of the things that as staff we have to be very careful about is that now that the council has voted to place this ballot measure in November, we as staff cannot advocate for any ballot measure. All we can do is educate. This presentation is intended to educate. And so as elected and appointed officials, those restrictions don't apply to you. But for us, they do. And so as much as we would love to spread the word, we're doing so in judicious ways.
Are we going to do any more community outreach regarding this? Are we still doing more presentations? I'd like to see a presentation in Spanish. Our community is predominantly Hispanic, and I feel like this isn't being related in Spanish, aside from maybe the flyers, but a lot of people don't go online. Just like my colleague mentioned, we did see a lot of, social media posts and people like, where's the money going? They have no idea what's going on. So what I've been doing is copying the link and sharing the link to the city website that takes you directly to these presentations, but mostly I've only seen them in English, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll work with the city manager's office to see if we can highlight or create a section specifically for Spanish materials. I'll also take your recommendation regarding a Spanish-only presentation
I
to
think
the
that'd be
city
great,
manager.
much needed, yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. And then we can figure out how we, from a logistics perspective, make that happen. I am bilingual, but I don't think I'm the one for the presentation, just because being frank, there's a lot of technical words here that I will struggle with in translating. I mean, I could probably figure out different ways or simpler ways of saying it. But anyways, those are details that I'll work out internally with the team to figure out how we can do it.
Thank you. And I think my last question would be, do we have anything that we were thinking of, just a possibility if the UUT doesn't pass?
So if the UUT doesn't pass, there's going to be more cuts, and there's going to be cuts every year until something happens in terms of revenue. So, for example, I mentioned in one of our slides tonight that in over a course of 6 years, we've seen our costs go up by 11.5 million. And so that's dollars that the city has had to figure out how to fund, right? Like we have a finite pie. The pie is only so big. And as these 4 or 5 things keep going up in price, that pie doesn't grow very much, right? And so every year, the city has silently been becoming more efficient, has slightly been doing more with less, because the same levels of services that the residents have expected, they have continued, but they've been at the expense of internal things, cuts to training, cuts to conferences, cuts to professional development, printing, supplies. Those are cuts that residents often don't see, right? And so if a revenue measure doesn't pass, whether it's this year or in the future, that pie is going to continue getting smaller, in the sense that these costs are going to continue putting pressure on that existing size pie. And so what I would think is going to happen is there's going to be a structural deficit every year ranging between $2 and $3 million. This coming year is going to be $4 million. But the following year, let's say it's another $2 million. When you keep cutting $2 to $3 million every year until there is no end, you're not going to have a city of Southgate. You're not going to have any resemblance or semblance of what you consider to be your current level of government. We just won't be able to afford it. The city is going to have to make some really difficult decisions, to a point where you might not have a parks department, for example, because as a city, we have some legal obligations in terms of public safety and health and things we have to do legally. We're mandated to do them legally. For example, police patrol services. Believe it or not, detectives, it's not legally mandated. That's a nice to have. We like to solve crimes. It keeps crimes low. But the core function for a police department is patrol. You look at community development, there's a lot of mandated things that the community development has to be able to do. So that can only shrink so much. Now, the wait times might increase, but the core function remains. There is no legal mandate for our parks programs. So that essentially goes away when we start talking about prioritization. And I'm really talking about long-term, right, if this continues. I'm not saying the Parks Department is going to go away in 2 or 3 or 4 years, but if no revenue comes in the long term, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a dwindling down of services to only the core functions. The things that residents come to expect are going to have to go away, not because the city wants to do it, but because we can't afford it.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Sorry, I just thought about it. And this is more for me to understand. I understand that, and I don't know if it applies to Southgate, but I understand that Mayor Bass passed a 10 million budget or something for crosswalks for LAUSD schools. That came out in the news. So I'm wondering, does Southgate get any of that? Just because I know that one is the biggest thing that took everyone by surprise, you know, and I going back to what my colleagues have said, maybe a little bit more of head. I know it was talked about, but a little bit of heads up for the first day of school where it threw everyone off. And I'm saying it because communities have said that to me, right? Like different neighbors.
Sure.
So that might still be helpful for people to understand what's going on. But anyway, my other question was on behalf of the budget that passed.
Yeah, the city of LA is its own municipality, just like
Got it.
Southgate. And so the funding that Mayor Bass passes is strictly for the city of LA boundaries.
Even though it's LAUSD schools,
LAUSD and the city of LA are two distinct entities.
is the city going to try to be, push on these others like Southeast LA?
Sorry, one more time.
Is the city of Southgate, do you know, are they intending to do, I don't know how it works. I know it's intended for the LA County, but ask for some support.
The city of LA funding, there's just no way, like zero way that they're going to fund crossing guards in our city. That's just not going to happen. But the city has been taking proactive steps even before the school year started, extensive meetings with the school district in attempts to figure out a compromise, because the city has no legal obligation to provide crossing guards, but neither does the school district. And so the school district wants to wash their hands of it. There was conversations related to potentially doing some kind of volunteer program, but the issue with the volunteer program is somebody has to run it, and somebody has to take the risk. Somebody has to insure it. All of those are expensive. Somebody has to provide the training. And LAUSD had zero interest, or at least tentatively no interest in doing that. And so it is an expensive thing to have. I think it's important to have. It's not a decision that the city made lightly, but it is $750,000. And so that is one area that will likely see a gradual restoration, I think, based on council direction if they so choose. So hopefully that answers your question.
So if the council wanted to reach out to the district, to the board member that represents Southgate, that is a possibility.
They have.
They have, and they haven't gotten responses from them.
They've gotten responses, but not responses
From the
that-
board
that
member.
provide solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, the funding that LA City was using was LADOT, LA Department of Transportation funds that they kind of had set for something else.
Mm.
So it just, and like you said, it only applies within LA City boundaries.
Right.
So the same way Southgate has to pay for crossing guards, LA City has to pay for their own crossing guards. Every other city has to pay for their own crossing guards within the
Right.
school district.
Either the school district or the city.
And the school district budget isn't doing well either. I
Right.
think they're even close to being insolvent, right?
Right. They're struggling just like we are.
Yeah.
Probably a little worse.
Yeah. So it's not looking good for anybody, but, I appreciate the city's efforts. I know that PD, the chief made a comment about asking PD to kind of step in whenever they can. But I mean, knowing that they're short staffed to begin with, and
Right.
that,
And I think it's
there's a lot
important
to do here in Southgate. So
Yeah, and it's important to note that everything comes at the expense of something else. And so the police department is deploying its resources during the school hours in the morning, but that also means that every call that's non-priority is on hold
yeah.
because they're dedicating their staff to the schools, right? So something they're addressing something, but something else is impacted.
Yeah, and like you said, that's what it's taking now with, unless there's another source. And I know that there were talks about these cuts being made to hold the city hostage to have the UUT pass, but it's just the reality of our finances. Everybody's prices go up for everybody. Our groceries have gone up, our utilities have gone up, everything has gone up, and thankfully, we get to get raises. The city employees hadn't gotten a raise since I think 2008, right, or something like that. until
I have to
last
go
year.
back and look. I don't have those numbers.
But I mean, when you were talking about what the city has done to cut expenses, salaries were another thing. And you know, as somebody who's worked hard to get an education, get a career going, when you're stuck in a place where you don't get a raise, it, you know, it makes you look somewhere else. And I feel like that's, well, not I feel, I've seen that that's affected our city as well, because, you know, usually people do come and get good experience, get to grow career wise, but financially they weren't able to do that. And we were losing a lot of staff. And I know that people complained about why staff got raises recently, but it's something that had to be done considering how long it took.
Yeah, I would agree. And, you know, the increase was a cost of living adjustment.
It wasn't even that big. I mean,
Not even
I don't
that.
mean to
So
laugh,
just-
but it's just,
right.
you know, it wasn't a lot. And
Mhm.
like I said, you know, when you're somebody graduating who invested a lot of time in their career development, you know, through school, which is not cheap, it hasn't been cheap. It's terrible to be working somewhere where you give it your all and not, you know, get a raise.
Right. And I think it's just about the quality that Southgate is willing to have in terms of its employees, right?
Exactly.
We saw it's not listed in this because the cuts list was 6 slides and I had to summarize them. But one of the things that the Public Works Department did is they restructured their organization to get rid of the senior position, not get rid, but they were vacant. But they essentially removed the senior positions and replaced them with entry level. And what happens with that is you're saving money on the salary, but that comes at the expense of more errors, slower projects. And at the end of the day, that costs money. And whether we want to be competitive or not, I think is a policy choice. But whether we want to or not, are competing with every single city around us. And I don't mean the immediate cities. We're competing with every city in Southern California. I have employees that drive an hour. They pass how many cities on their way here to come work here, right? And so we have to consider that, I think, as part of the conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's a sad situation, but I appreciate y'all's hard work on this.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, are we ready to receive and file? Do we have to vote for this?
It's a receive and file.
I would say yes, although I'm curious as to what happened if you all voted no.
Before I one question that just popped up in my head. As a city, do we have an option or access to any like state emergency funding? I know during COVID, there was like a fund, right? But for cities that are under this circumstance, like, is there any option?
So there is no dedicated funding source for cities that are, you know, struggling financially. I think if there was, the balance on that fund would be zero, right? But I do want to emphasize one point that I didn't have an opportunity on the presentation to highlight. Yodid, would you mind going to slide 19? This slide, I think, is important because this is a story that oftentimes the community doesn't see. You talked about funding for these emergency situations. I want to highlight to you that the city, in terms of its overall bucket of money that it receives, it's all of its revenue. 23% comes from sales tax, 15% comes from property tax, but we get 44% from grants. That's more than sales tax and property tax combined. And I think that's an extremely important conversation piece, because what this shows, and it's highly unusual, by the way, what this shows is the level of effort that city staff goes to obtain funding outside of the general fund, to obtain funding from all these grantors. For those of you who may be involved in grants, you know how hard it is how competitive it is to get grants. But once you have the grant, how hard it is to spend the money and do so while following all the requirements, right? The feds have their own procurement guidelines. So it takes a significant amount of work to make this happen. And so I have this slide in here because of quite like similar questions to yours, but I want to highlight just how much money the city gets that's not our money that is used to better this community.
And I think that's important because you definitely don't get enough credit for that, but also to understand that, like you said, it takes a lot of work to administer these grants and staff time and getting people to work on reporting back to the state or the federal people and just the amount of reports you have to do and the itemization that you have to do and how precise you have to be on everything, that it's not, I would argue it's nowhere near easy.
It's more work, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, 44% is a lot of money, but as far as the workload
Right,
that
right.
comes with it it's pretty substantial.
And also share this with the community. I think a lot of our community is not aware of this. You see that a lot on social media, right? Like, why are you using this money for this? We could have had that, but they don't understand what a grant is or what the purpose of the limitations are for grants. So that's also important to share.
Right. Yes, it is. I agree. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay.
So I'll move to receive and file.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Valenzuela,
Yes.
Chairperson Prieto.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item B, Community Development Department update.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Planning Commission. And I really want to thank Louis, our Administrative Director, for being here. He's had a lot to handle in
Thank you.
the administrative services and presenting this information in a way that I think is really understandable and helps our departments function. So with the little resources that we have. So thank you, Luis. So Gabriel Perez, I'm your Community Development Director. I'm here to present an update that I've wanted to give for a long time to inform the Planning Commission in the community and some of the work that the Community Development Department does. A lot of this work we have to do within the constraints of our budget. And so the Community Development Department makes a lot happen with a very small team. And so our department currently is comprised of about 22 staff. And that's not much more than staff I had when I was working for a much smaller city in the past and of 45,000 people, right? And so when you think about what this department does for the city with respect to our different divisions, so we have a few different divisions, which includes the housing division, the building and safety division, the code enforcement division, the planning division, and economic development division as well, which we share with the city manager's office. So we wanted to highlight more of what we do and what some of the goals are for the next year into future years, and an opportunity for you to meet some of my esteemed colleagues, very talented and make things happen that are pretty amazing for the city. Oh, it's not. I might have to ask you to move. Okay, thanks, Yuli. It's here, thanks. All right, next slide. So, that's okay. Okay, thank you. All right, so what we'll do is cover the different divisions within the city, and at the end, we'll have an opportunity to have questions. And so some of my colleagues will help present this today. So what I do want to highlight, I've been here about a little bit less than a year and a half, and there are some challenges that the Community Development Department has to be able to deliver services with the limited resources. So what Louis mentioned is that we had to look for reductions of about $1.16 million throughout the whole department, which means we've reduced some of our staffing. We were able to save a lot of positions that we originally thought that we would have to consider layoffs for, but that came at the expense of reducing conferences, training budgets, supplies budget. So we're operating on fumes to be able to make this work, right? And that's very difficult. So imagine having to communicate to staff to say, hey, we don't have that money for training that we would have had in the past, right? And that's really important for someone's career growth to be able to have that training. And you want that training if they're doing important work in the community that requires you to have a certain level of education. And that's expected in any other city in the state. So what we want to do right now, I do want to cover, we'll start with the housing division. And I do want to, we do have Carol Averill. She is our housing manager. She makes a lot happen. So there's going to be a few slides here, and you may not be aware of all the different housing division services that we provide, but they're extensive, and I'm sure it'll blow your mind, and you'll be able to ask her some questions towards the end. So I'll pass it on to her.
Thank you. Good evening. So the housing division is a small division. However, we do have several grants that we manage. Most of them are federally funded. We do have some state grants and some county money that is coming to the housing division as well pretty soon. So actually, let me start with the mission of the housing division. So our mission is, do you mind for the next slide? Thank you. So our mission is to provide safe, decent, and sanitary housing conditions for very low-income families while managing resources efficiently. So the programs that we have, some of the programs that we have are Section 8 housing assistance. We have the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. We have the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and we have some homeless prevention program. So the general services that we provide, our staff provides public counter and case services Monday through Thursday from 7:30 to 11:30. And then after hours, anybody can make an appointment to meet with a caseworker, and that is available by request. We also have information and can provide information for online resources for renters seeking housing information and referrals. We also have several property owners that come and meet with our staff to see if they want to participate, for example, on the Section 8 program. We also have fair housing referrals. We partner with the Fair Housing Foundation. And so we have any fair housing issues, we do refer tenants or landlords if there are some disputes, or we have inquiries that we provide to them. They do investigations and also answer some questions in regards to security deposits for our tenants. And then we do the federal administration, well, program administration. So we do the day-to-day administration of Section 8, CDBG, home, and some homeless prevention programs. And we do have some state programs as well that we do some program administration. So the Community Development Block Grant Program is an annual formula grant that comes from the federal government, from the Housing and Urban Development Department, and is used to benefit low and moderate income residents and neighborhoods that are guided by 3 national objectives. So one is to provide decent housing, suitable living environment, and economic opportunity. So we try to provide housing assistance for homeless persons, those that are at risk of homelessness. We try to provide assistance for affordable housing retention and supportive housing for persons that have special needs. And then also, we provide neighborhood safety improvements, public facility access, historic property preservation, and energy conservation. And then on economic opportunities, we can provide funding for job creation and retention, small business support, employment services, and expanded access for financing for development. So some examples of eligible activities under CDBG, for example, we have capital improvement projects or rehabilitation, housing rehabilitation for low and moderate income households. We currently have a program called Neighborhood Revitalization Program that provides grants for seniors. So, for example, if they have issues with the roof and they need a roof replacement because, as you know, we have an old stock of housing, we can provide a grant to help them with the replacement of the roof and some other issues that they need to bring up to code. We also can provide funding for parks and recreational facility improvements, crime prevention, and senior disabled centers or services for seniors, domestic violence counseling, and economic development. So when we prepare the 5-year consolidated plan, we had surveys and we met with different organizations and individuals, and we identified the funding priorities. So we have under the high funding priority, domestic violence counseling, graffiti removal, senior services, substance abuse services, and youth services. Under the medium priority was crime prevention, employment training, and disability services. And so we can use CDBG funding for some activities, but there are some activities that are ineligible, like, for example, general government expenses, any political or religious activities, or certain equipment purchases of motor vehicles. So for fiscal year 26-27, we have a timeline on funding. So every year when we receive the allocation, we prepare an RFP or a NOFA, a Notice of Funding Availability. Around, during the fall, we release an RFP for public service grants or capital improvement projects. And so we have an applicant workshop sometime on November, and usually is a mandatory meeting. Then also we have an application due, sometimes it's on December 1st or a little kind of like in the middle of December. And then once we receive the applications, we bring that to the Citizens Advisory Committee for review, and also they make their recommendations for the funding. And those recommendations go to the council when we present the annual action plan. And so they go for approval, and then after that we submit the proposed annual action plan to HUD. So for the fiscal year 26-27, just to give you a snapshot of the funding, we have $1,187,239. That is the total amount that we receive for CDBG entitlement, and then there is like $34,099 of carryover funding from last year for a couple of programs that did not move forward. And so we're also required by regulation to allocate 20% of the amount that we receive under the total CDBG entitlement for administration and planning, and we have a cap of 20%. And so that translates to $230,628. And then we also have a cap of 15% for public service activities, which is $178,086. The remaining balance can be used for capital improvements, for the neighborhood revitalization program, and some other projects like parks and recreation and so on. So besides the CDBG program, we have the home program. So the purpose of the home program, this is one of the largest federal block grant dedicated exclusively to create affordable housing for low-income households. So the eligible uses are for home buyer or homeowner rehabilitation assistance, rental housing development, it could be homeownership development as well. Tenant-based rental assistance, we can provide rental assistance for up to 2 years. We can do some site acquisition, demolition, or relocation cost that will result in affordable housing. So the income targeting is at least 90% of the rental beneficiaries must be at or below 60% of the area median income in projects that are 5 or more assisted, home assisted units. And at least 20% must be at or below 50% of the area median income. Homeownership assistance could maybe utilized for households that are up to 80% of the area median income. In addition, the home program requires that we match the funds, and also there is a set aside for community housing development organizations. So when we develop affordable housing, we do have to match every home dollar with 25 cents from non-federal sources. Like, for example, the developer can say, okay, we need certain amount of money from home, but we already own the property. So the property could be used, or the value of the property can be used as a match for the program. And the set aside is, we do have to set aside 15% of the home allocation to support community housing development organizations, also known as CHODOs. And the organizations that apply have to be a nonprofit, and also they have to apply for the funding. They have to be eligible as a CHODO, and the city council has to approve them or certify them as a CHODO. And then they can apply for that 15% that is set aside for affordable housing projects. But the other thing too with this 15% allocation, there is a 5% that we could set aside to also help the CHODOs for operating funding. We don't have to do it all the time. It's not mandatory, but the 15% is. So just to give you an idea, for fiscal year 26-27, we received $486,118 for the home allocation. The 15% set aside for the CHODO is $72,917. And then most of the funding is going to the residential rehabilitation program. Now, for the home residential rehabilitation program, we are required to do appraisals, and then the after rehab value has to be 95% of the value of the property. So if the property is too high, like let's say the after rehab value, or the 95% after rehab value is $600,000, and there is a property that their value is $700,000, they're not going to qualify for the program because they are already above the after rehab value. It's very regulated, but there are a lot of properties that do qualify as well. So the other thing too is that for this program, we are required to set aside 10% for administration. And so that is about $48,611. Another program that we have is Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher. How this program works is, there are eligible households that will receive a voucher. The Housing Authority pays a rental subsidy directly to the landlord. The families that receive the voucher have to be on the waiting list. Usually the waiting list for Section 8 is pretty long and it takes years to get through it. We try to purge the list at least every 2 years. So right now we have at least probably 1,000 people on the waiting list. And the last time we opened it was in 2024. So we did receive a lot of applications, but we have to conduct some sort of lottery, and then people have to meet certain requirements, and then they can be placed on the waiting list. So in addition that the Housing Authority provides a rental subsidy to the landlord, the tenant also has to contribute to the rent. So they usually pay about 30% of their adjusted household income towards the rent. So that the subsidy covers the remainder. So it's usually they cover 30% and the Housing Authority covers the 70% of the rent. Also, the properties have to meet the housing quality standards. We are required to do annual inspections, and in order for the unit to qualify, they have to pass the inspection. Every time we do an inspection, if there is something that is not qualifying or is not meeting the quality standards, we do require for the landlords to fix it. And they, depending on what the issues are, they have 30 days. If it's something urgent, they have 24 hours to fix it. And then also, we have about 671 vouchers. The Southgate Housing Authority has that many vouchers. We have some Section 8 vouchers. We have emergency housing vouchers that started during COVID. And so we have about 20 to 21 tenants under the emergency housing project. And then also we have some foster youth to independent vouchers. So currently we have 383 families that are being served, that they're leasing a unit here at the Housing Authority. And the reason why you see, we have 671, but there's only 383 that are leasing a property is because the rents are quite high. And so we receive a certain allocation of funding, and then we pretty much spend most of the money, but it can cover only rents for 383 families. So just to give you an idea, for this fiscal year, we have 383 vouchers under lease, and we received $6.4 million to cover rents. We do have sometimes tenants that come from other housing authorities. They can port in or out of the housing authorities depending on where they can find a unit, because sometimes it's very difficult to find a rental unit that qualifies as well. Here at the Southgate Housing Authority, we have several landlords that are really good, and they work with us, and so we're really always diligently trying to do an outreach and getting more landlords so we can get more units. So the housing division has some goals and priorities. So for 2026 and 2027, we have some goals, like for planning and administration. We do the overall program management. We have to do monitoring. We have to do reporting and evaluation of the CDBG and home projects. We have to prepare an annual action plan. Every 5 years, we have to prepare a 5-year consolidated plan. And every year after the end of the fiscal year, we have to prepare the CAPER, which is an annual report that we're required to submit to HUD with what accomplishments we met during the fiscal year. Also, we're required to provide fair housing services to comply with regulatory requirements and affirmatively further fair housing. So that addresses housing discrimination or any kind of tenant-landlord disputes. Then we have public services to improve quality of life for low and moderate income residents. And so we fund public service activities that will serve low-income families. Then we maintain affordable housing. This is by conserving and improving housing stock through housing rehabilitation of units that are occupied by low and moderate income households, whether it is by providing loans or grants. And this priority meets the substandard housing, so we are able to address that. And then for public facilities and infrastructure, we can do acquisition, design, and construction of public facilities in CDBG eligible target areas. So, and then we can do economic development, so we can invest in and implement programs that will strengthen local economic opportunities. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Carol through the Housing Division tries to make a lot happen with a limited amount of staff. And I do want to mention that the Housing Division, how they get their funding is a lot different than a lot of other departments like planning and building. So it's not general fund based, that comes from federal and state funding. And so Carol has to manage that whole division with those funds, and they're not supported by the general fund. In a sense, she's kind of insulated from any changes in the general fund. But some of the work that they do is really important, right? Because we heard that it improves how the housing stock in the city, the infrastructure that support in the past, CDBG has supported a lot of our road reconstruction, and some of the services providing is preventing homelessness in the city. So very, very important work that they do. So I'm going to cover the Building and Safety Division, and then I'm going to pass it on to John in a second, because he's going to cover code enforcement. William Campana, he is the building official. He couldn't be here today, but he has the important responsibility of leading both the Building Safety Division and the code enforcement team. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. Going the wrong way. Okay. So the core responsibilities of the Building Division is plan review and permitting. And so a lot of you have been probably to our counter and seen how busy it is. In the Community Development Department, a lot of it is based on building requests to the city, people pulling permits. So we're responsible for reviewing plans, issuing permits, and those are for additions, alterations, remodels, and new construction. So making sure that all the construction in the city is being done so in a way that is safe and allows people the opportunity to be able to do that in the city. The second is construction and occupancy inspections. So the city does provide inspections for construction. That's to make sure that those facilities are safe. And then last is specialized in mobile home inspections. So we assist in investigating complaints of illegal construction, mobile home inspections as needed, and enforce new state mandates. I'm going to pass it on to code enforcement next, and it'll come back to me for some of our goals for the Building Division. So I'm going to pass it on to John and introduce them. So John just joined us as the code enforcement supervisor. How many months has it been? About 6 months. And so it's been a position that we haven't had in a long time. at least when I was in here. For much of the last year and a half, we were surviving with only 2 code officers for a city of 40,000 people. Now that's starting to grow a little bit, but it's also not what the city used to have in the past. So John will talk about that in a second.
Good evening. I'm John Cataldo. I'm the code enforcement supervisor with the city. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what code enforcement is currently doing and what they cover. First of all, we are involved in enforcing an investigation of the city municipal code, as well as building code, zoning, health, housing, environmental codes, and receiving and investigating complaints. The second item that we do is notices and legal proceedings, issuing corrective notices and citations, preparing cases and testifying at hearings and before the council as well as in court. And then the last portion is community engagement, educating property owners, residences, businesses about the regulations and fostering voluntary compliance. We'd always like to get voluntary compliance from folks and not have to take any legal action or have to issue citations or anything like that. A little bit more about what we do. The officers conduct detailed inspections, analyze conditions and research records, collaborate with other agencies and ensure compliance with property maintenance, building standards, and land use. We work very closely with our Public Works Department and also the Police Department. This work mitigates risks from unsafe structures, substandard housing, unpermitted construction, and environmental hazards, and also helping to maintain the safety and healthy of living environment for the community. And next slide, thanks. Getting into a little bit about what code enforcement specifically enforces. Number one is property maintenance. That's probably our biggest area. This involves graffiti, landscaping, trash and debris, inoperable vehicles, and discarded furniture and storage on the public right-of-way. Next is building maintenance. This is covering unpainted, abandoned, or unfinished buildings, inadequate electrical, plumbing, mechanical, and fire protection systems. The next one would be improper occupancies, illegal garage conversions, room additions, dwelling, and conversions resulting in a substandard living condition. Next is illegal dumping, refuge left on the right-of-way, on the public streets, highways, alleys, sidewalks, parkways, and other public areas. Stormwater management. This is the intentional or unintentional runoff of hazardous liquids from private property and pollutants into the stormwater system in the city. And then business and animal regulations. We do, of course, have our own animal control that we contract with through SIACA, but those duties kind of overlap with code enforcement as well. We have animal regulations not only in our animal section of the municipal code, but also in the zoning code. And so we share those duties and responsibilities with animal control. We also deal with unpermitted and unlicensed businesses, illegal land use, and I already said that, in conjunction with animal control. And then our next slide kind of gives you a map of the city, shows you our various patrol areas. We have 4 areas currently. We did have 5 in the past. At one point, we had 5 officers. Currently, we have 3 and 1 in training. So we're a little short-staffed. But ideally, we would have 1 person in each of the 4 areas, 1 being the west part of the city, 2 and 3 in the central part of the city, and then 4 being the east part of the city in Hollydale. And basically, each officer is responsible for one of these areas, and they handle anything that comes up in that particular area of the city, which could be pretty much anything and everything from all the things that I just previously mentioned.
What does the yellow stand for? I can't read on the key.
You know, that's a map that was used. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is there between the white and the yellow. I was thinking the white was industrial and the yellow was residential, but that's not completely accurate. Do you happen to know what the?
That's what I was assuming as well. Well, actually, no, because in area 2,
But-
that's not industrial.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the northern area in the center there is industrial too. So, and then in the south area, some of the white area is residential. So,
You know, just reading at the map, it says service area eligible for CDBG funded activities.
oh, that's the CDBG
Oh.
zones, right? Okay,
Thank you.
that would make sense. Oh, okay.
Thank you, John. And one thing I want to mention also is that this past year with some of the budget reductions did result in elimination of 2 part-time code enforcement officer positions, and those officers were doing some important work with relationship to illegal dumping. And so if you've seen illegal dumping around the city, it's a big issue, especially along our railroad. So it does take people to be able to follow up with that on a daily basis. And so right now, there isn't those dedicated code officers to be able to do that work. And so we don't have dedicated people to do that work. That problem only increases. And so that's a challenge for John to be able to deal with and to make that work with his current team right now. So right now he's growing his team, and he has it's a total of 4 code enforcement staff right now, trying to do the best they can with the staffing resources that he currently has right now. So, but I want to cover what the goals are. That includes building and code enforcement. And so William identified some of these goals, which is preventing unauthorized substandard construction, trying to eliminate unsafe prohibited garage conversions where we can, respond quickly to complaints as quickly as possible, provide weekend coverage potentially for code enforcement in the future. So currently code enforcement coverage is Monday through Thursday during our regular working hours. But the coverage for Friday, Saturday, Sunday doesn't exist right now. And so the only way that works is if we can be fully staffed to be able to cover the city and to make sure that it's safe. You don't just have one person out at one time. But that is a goal, to provide weekend coverage. Some we'll get some resources to do that in the future. And then training, our community development technicians. So we've had been pretty short staffed in the building division for a while. So we did lose our senior community development technician who did retire this past year. And due to the budget reduction, that position was not filled. So there's a lot of pressure on the community development techs that you see helping out the front counter. And so other goals are setting code enforcement staff to disaster response training, responding to complaints within 48 hours, and then training new staff members. As we mentioned before, responding to those complaints within 48 hours becomes very difficult, and it's going to become more like days and weeks to be able to respond to that. But that's the goal that we have. So I do want to go on to the planning division, and planning division does a lot of great work, and this is the division that you interface with the most as planning commissioners. And so I'll pass this on to our planning manager, John Signo.
Thank you. Yeah, the planning division, we're the division that staffs the planning commission. So of course we see you at every meeting. We are in charge of current planning, long-range planning, and some notable projects. So next slide. Current planning are those projects that provide zoning information to the public. We process administrative cases. Those include design reviews and accessory dwelling units. And discretionary cases, those are the ones that come before the planning commission, including the conditional use permits, tentative parcel maps, tentative tract maps, variances, zoning, and general plan amendments. And the last couple there would have to go before the city council as well. But those are your projects that are your day-to-day projects. Apart from that, we also have the long-range project or long-range planning on the right side there. Those are the general plan updates, the zoning code updates, specific plans, and housing element compliance. So those are your long-range plans. We deal with both of those everyday projects being the permits and entitlements we deal with at a daily basis with customers doing individual projects with the current planning, and with the long-range planning, updating our long-range plans when they need to. Next slide. Just in terms of the activities that we've had in our division, the left side there shows the 2025 building activities for new construction, and those are a number of units. You can see there, we have single-family accessory dwelling units, mobile manufacturing homes, which we didn't have anything permitted. But you can see the very total down there, down at the bottom there is 158 total units permitted. The majority of those were the accessory dwelling units at about 154 out of the 158. So we do get a lot of accessory dwelling units coming through our cities. And the next column there are the completed projects. Those are the ones that actually come to fruition and are built. So even out of 158 that we permitted, the ones that are completed are a lot less. A lot of times projects are either delayed for whatever reason. It might be funding issues with the property owner, or they decide to just hold off for a little bit. So there's not that many that are actually completed as compared to permitted. But you can see in terms of how many projects we do have, 158, we're we are only open 4 days a week. And so there's only, when you do the math, it's only about under 200 working days that we have. And we have 158, permitted units there. So we do, we typically get around 3 projects a week, so quite a caseload. Then on top of, we've been short-staffed for quite a while. So it has been busy in our division. On the right side there, you have the Planning Commission actions. So these are the projects that went before the Planning Commission. 2025, you see there's a total of 11 resolutions that you took a look at. 9 were approved, 2 were denied, for the total of 11. 2026, as of June, we're pretty much on the same track with 5 resolutions approved during that time period. And so you really see a small fraction of what the planning division actually sees. The ones that we take before the Planning Commission are the ones that are discretionary. They require a public hearing. We notice the residents and we publish in the paper. And we bring that project over to the Planning Commission. But the vast majority of the projects we deal with are the ministerial projects, such as the accessory dwelling units and single-family detached units. And that takes up a lot of time with our staff. Next slide. But there were some notable development projects that were reviewed by the Planning Commission. And these do have an impact on our community. They create homes for people. They bring people to our community. They can generate sales tax. So there's a lot of positives when it comes to new development. Some of the notable projects that we've seen this year, the top left there, the Planning Commission looked at the Habitat for Humanity project over at 9019 Long Beach Boulevard last month. You have the Enterprise project at 3705 Firestone that you also looked at last month. That's a rehab of an existing dilapidated building that we're hopeful that Enterprise can come in, make it look a lot nicer, and generate business out of that location. The bottom left, we have Pack Track Solar Carport over at 10,000 Atlantic Avenue that was approved back in May. And we also have a drive-through restaurant that was approved at 4816-4820 Firestone Boulevard at the beginning of the year in January. So again, development is what you see here, but they are far and few. They are discretionary projects that require Planning Commission approval. And once approved, hopefully they'll generate sales tax. They'll bring people to our city, and it will help with the budget discussion you heard earlier. Next slide. We also deal with long-range projects. This one is a Gateway District Area Plan, which we started several years ago. It kind of got shelved for a little bit, but we're trying to rehash that. We got some funding that we're working with the COG on. And the Gateway District Area Plan is a long-range plan guiding future transit-oriented growth around the planned light rail station. It includes some new streets, plazas, open space, and a parking strategy. Metro is looking to use the existing line there to put a light rail transit, the corner of Firestone and Atlantic. And we're looking for opportunities to create transit-oriented development there that can produce some housing, some mixed-use development, and other potential opportunities.
Something I want to highlight is that this effort right now is supported by some grant funding that we received from the Gateway Cities COG in an amount of about $300,000. So the planning division is being very efficient with some of the money that it's getting for long-range planning. You can't rely on the general fund to be able to support those efforts. So we're reaching out, trying to see where money exists so that we can be able to fund these efforts. So like what Louis mentioned before about grants providing a lot of revenues to the city, well, that's also helping to support some of these long-range planning efforts that hopefully in the future bring in more sales tax revenue and create those opportunities for the city.
Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so we do have a couple of goals in our division in planning. We are looking to update the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. That's coming before the Planning Commission next month in September. Just about every year, the state updates the requirements for ADUs, and so we come along and follow them and make sure that our ordinance is in compliance with state law. We're also looking to update the zoning code. We had some workshops with the Planning Commission and with City Council on that, looking to modernize our zoning standards to support our land use and development goals. We're looking to improve the permit processing system, streamline the review process, and improve the applicant's experience. We're looking to better integrate with other departments, including Public Works, some of our divisions, Building and Safety, Code Enforcement. And we're looking to do that by expanding the use of our Bluebeam Studio Sessions application on our computer, so there's better cross-departmental plan review. And then the last one was the Gateway District Area Plan that we just discussed. And again, that's to advance the transit-oriented development specific plan towards adoption. Last time it went to the Planning Commission, I believe the City Council as well, but then again, it was tabled for quite some time. So we are looking to use the grant funding that we have in order to revive that plan. Next slide.
So I do want to highlight something for planning division. So, there is some stresses on planning division to be able to carry on these activities. They're required activities like what was mentioned by Luis earlier. But he is short-staffed, right? So that means we used to have a senior planner. Some of you remember Rodrigo Pelayo. And so he was handling some more complex projects for the city. And it was a person that John would rely on to be able to help make these presentations. Now what's having to happen, because we can't fill that position right now, because we're not allowed to because of the budget, is that it's requiring John to have to step in more to be able to make those presentations. I'm taking on some of those cases that normally I wouldn't have to step into to be able to make those projects still happen. And also like the other stuff that John has. So it does put a strain to be able to make sure that those projects continue, because those applicants expect a lot of these projects to move in a very timely way, and it becomes more difficult the less resources you have to be able to do that. So the last part I want to mention is the Economic Development Division, which is really a role that's shared between the City Manager's Office and the Community Development Department. We don't have an Economic Development Manager. I know there's been comments in the past that have alluded to the need to have one, but we currently don't have one. It'd be great to have one that's budgeted to be able to lead those efforts for the city. So a lot of those roles are shared with existing duties in the city. But I'll mention a few things that the city has been working on. Next slide. So there is a cross-departmental work group that has been developed to be able to look at economic development in the city, because we realize that it touches a lot of our departments in the city. It's about how our parks look. It's about how our streets and businesses look with code enforcement. And so if we can make sure that these places look nice, that matters to community development and businesses wanting to move into the city. It's all about our planning efforts. Do we have the right development standards and flexibility to allow people to do business in the city? We are in touch with our different departments to see how we can make that happen. It also involves Public Works, right? So the works that Public Works does in improving our streets, such as recently on Tweedy Boulevard, that really matters to be able to attract investment to the city, where before, if you have a road that is dilapidated, you're not going to attract that investment. The next is business outreach. So our department's doing a lot to be able to reach out to new businesses. And, we don't disclose all the businesses we're reaching out to because, as Louis mentioned before, it is competitive with a lot of the cities to be able to attract these businesses. And the city has done pretty well. There's really good demographics for the city based on having a lot of high density within the city to be able to attract those businesses. But some of the businesses that we've reached out to in the past, and this has been mentioned to City Council, has been Costco, has been Trader Joe's, and we're going to continue to do that outreach. And it continues. It's something that's on a weekly basis. So we aren't just sitting on our hands and waiting for those businesses to come to us. We are doing some proactive outreach to bring them into the city, and we're always open to ideas in terms of what people want to see in the city of Southgate. The next one I want to mention has been an opportunity for the city to be able to propose opportunity zones. This has been an effort under the recent federal legislation, the Big Beautiful Bill, that allows for eligible, like underserved census tracts throughout the country to be able to qualify as an opportunity zone where there could be more investment, where capital gains could be invested, and then potentially those capital gains that someone has can be relieved if they invested in an opportunity zone type project. That means that it has to be something that develops as a project within that census tract. And so there's a lot of benefits to investors to be able to do that. Now, there was an Opportunity Zones 1.0, which was operated within the last 10 years and is set to expire at the end of this year. We don't have any Opportunity Zones in the city currently. We realized for this next Opportunity Zones 2.0, which starts in 2027, that I think there was about 10 eligible census tracts in the city. We made those recommendations to the governor to be able to propose to the federal government. Right now, there is a public comment period to be able to make suggestions on what was recommended by the governor. Currently, none of our census tracts are recommended to be opportunity zones. So we are trying to request that the public provide comments that some of our census tracts be identified as opportunity zones. I'm going to go into that in a second to show you what we identified to the governor. One of those census tracts would include the future Firestone station, the future Metro line that would be coming on at the corner of Firestone and Atlantic. And we thought that area would receive a lot of investment in the future based on the railroad going in. And so layering the opportunity zone there would be a great benefit to the city. But hopefully that could still work out, and we will provide our public comments for that. Hopefully there's a different outcome. Next slide. And then just tying into how all the different departments tie into economic development, as I mentioned, having good quality housing and having people be able to have housing that's quality housing, where they can actually repair their housing, makes a big difference. It helps with code enforcement. The city manager's office takes care of a lot of our marketing for the city. Having safe streets with the police department, that matters. A lot of times we have new businesses that want to meet with the police chief because safety is really critical for new businesses coming in. The quality parks, and as I mentioned, public works. Next slide, please. And so we are trying to take a more proactive approach, as I mentioned, reaching out to different businesses, but also look at target sectors that might be important for the city for its future. So in the past, we've had businesses that were truck storage, but maybe looking at the next phase of what industrial manufacturing type industries would make sense that provide revenue and jobs in the city. And then also beginning to develop a lot of long-term relationships for the city so that people know that the city's open for business. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned before, the opportunity zones background, the I don't know if you could really tell on the map what's what. It's a little bit squeezed, but the yellow census tracts were the ones that we recommended to the governor. None of them are currently recommended, so we are asking the public to suggest that those be included as opportunity zones. And that would be effective in 2027 for a 10-year period. Next slide. Another effort, a creative effort that we're working on is repurposing the courthouse. A lot of you know that the courthouse has stayed vacant for a long time. Needs a lot of work. It can't just open. It actually needs some tenant improvements to bring it back. I think it's almost a 100-year-old building, and so it has a lot of potential to provide opportunity for the city. And so there is a grant that we're going to apply for. That's a $10 million grant from the state to be able to make this into a community resilience center. So if there's an emergency, there's extreme heat, disasters, that it could be a place where people can shelter. And there's been a lot of issues around the Southeast LA, more recently the Boyle Heights, when they had the issues with the Lineage fire. There's been the need for people to have filtered air and a safe place to go to. Luckily, that wasn't as close here, but those issues could happen here, right? And so to have a facility where people can come to that's trusted could be a really good thing to have in the city. But what this grant is going to allow us to do is to also be able to infuse services into this facility. But we're also looking at the possibility of including an economic development bent to this project. So we are working with the Esperanza Community Housing, who would be technical advisors on this grant, who operate the Mercado La Paloma. If you've ever been there in South LA, and they have Michelin star restaurants in there. So what they're actually looking to do is help us create that kind of environment here to some extent, where we could even have small business food vendors that could operate out of the facility. One of the operators we're looking to have operate this facility, and again, we're talking about budget issues, is that we want to bring in $10 million to be able to restore the building, but who's going to operate it? Well, the city's not going to be able to operate it. And what we want to do is make this budget neutral process or effort where this would be a public-private partnership. We're looking to work with a nonprofit organization called Chicanos por la Causa, and they're a large national organization that is willing to help run this facility, and they would be at no cost to the city, and they would also be able to provide assistance to the public, which also includes small business assistance loans, because they have a community development financing institution designation for their organization. So we're trying to be creative with this space, see how it could be an opportunity for businesses to be created, like in the business, and not just in the facility, but also to help grow Tweedy Boulevard and other parts of the city of Southgate. And so this is a really exciting opportunity. How do we use our existing facilities and leverage those to create new opportunities, bring in grants, and do it in a way that's not going to cost our general fund. Next slide, please. And so some of our other goals that we're still working on is downtown revitalization on Tweedy Boulevard. So now that the street improvements were done on Tweedy Boulevard, people are probably looking to the city to see, well, what's next, right? And so we've had to pause some efforts that we were working on, which was going to be facade upgrades to the CDBG program, but we had to stop that effort because of the reductions that we experienced in code enforcement. So if we can bring that code enforcement staff levels higher again, hopefully we can look into doing that facade program sometime in the future. Looking for small business support, as we mentioned, we're trying to do that effort with the Community Resilience Center and provide that support. Some of the more marketing with the city, focusing on our brand, business recruitment, as we mentioned, reaching out to future businesses, but also this aspect of looking at public art. So some of the public art funds that we have, how do we be strategic? So realizing that having really good quality public art could attract people to the city. and also make them want to spend time and money in the city. As John mentioned, the metro station and transit-oriented development, we think that's going to be really key for the city. I think there's an opportunity for us to work with Metro and ensure that we can work together on what that development's going to look like, and it's going to make a difference for the city. And then lastly, workforce development, and we're also trying to work that into the Community Resilience Center for the courthouse, and so that there would be opportunities for workforce development through that facility as well. So this is ongoing and developing, but it is something that we do take seriously. We realize that the budget isn't going to fix itself. It's going to require us to be very proactive with our economic development efforts in the city. Next slide. And then lastly, where I just want to end off is that there's a lot of great things that I'd like to do with the department, which to not spend all our time on day-to-day activities, but to really think about how we can make things better takes a lot of time to be able to do that. And you have to be able to not be bogged down by the existing work to do that. And you know, what is it going to take for us to have our A game on each of the divisions within the city? So in the past, we were starting to work on these efforts, which were 90-day plans focused on these three categories of high-level customer service, internal process improvements, and major projects for the city. And with these different goals underneath them, right? So how do we develop more transparency, more streamlined development review, improving plan review, improving city to resident communication, improving interdivision and interdepartmental coordination. So all these things that are really important to really have our A game at the city. It's kind of right now we have to put that on the side to be able to do the work that we're required to do. But to really make this city great, this is what we need to focus on. But we can't do that without the full resources to make that happen. And with that will mean at the end of the day, if we can do that, is that you're going to have better services for the community and the best quality environment for the future of our residents and children and our families. Last slide. And then this is just for the public if they ever need to get a hold of us. Those are our contact numbers for the different divisions, and we have different counter hours. We're not open all day to the public. Different divisions are open. Most of them are either to 11:30 a.m., which is the planning division and the housing division. Building safety is open till 2 p.m. And then the code enforcement division has a narrow window of 7:30 to 9 a.m. A lot of that has to do with the existing staffing as well. If that were ever to increase, then maybe those times could also be increased. But that's the end of our presentation. I know we went into a lot of depth here, but hopefully that helps you understand. Sometimes it boggles my mind to realize how much the department does and why that matters for the city of Southgate. But available for any questions, and I thank my colleagues for being here to be able to present what they do.
Thank you. That was a lot of information. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and open it up to our audience to see if there's any questions. Seeing none, I will move on to Zoom. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We have Mr. Mario Dominguez.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Perez. That was tremendous. I mean, really, you just laid out what the department does, and it encompasses a lot, a hell of a lot. Yeah, art. You hit on art at the end. Yeah, I sure would love to have for our city to have art. You know, maybe if we didn't have such a lame punk bitch ass for a city manager, we'd actually have some art. You know, earlier this year, I asked him, can we use the Tweedy Mile Business Improvement District funds? And the fucking guy said no. I never thought I'd live to see a city manager say no to funding art, and we're using city funds to put a mural on our library here on Tweedy Boulevard. Anyway, one of the questions I want to ask Ms. Averill is, in her presentation for the CDBG funds, she brought up something I never even was aware of, that CDBG funds could actually be used towards economic development. If she could speak on that and give some indication as to how that's even possible, because I didn't even think of using CDBG funds for economic development. If she could, sort of explain how, what sort of programs or how the money could be used. And that way, I'd like to know more about that. And you went into projects in development. The big one that I'm curious about is that drive-through restaurant. So, Mr. Perez, are we going to get Popeyes? You know, I think you or John Signal previously mentioned how we lost the opportunity, or maybe it was Rob Houston during the city council meeting. I forget where it was. Someone mentioned how, you know, we could have had a Popeyes at that location, but somehow it just went away. It fell apart. Are we going to score Popeyes at that location? And could you give some sort of update as to what that location could potentially be? The zoning code, you know, you did a presentation, I don't know, like a couple of city council meetings ago, it was having to do with the zoning code. And you explained how we have the M2 and the M3 to the east of our city between to the north Firestone Boulevard and to the south Imperial Highway. And you have Garfield Avenue that runs through that portion of our city. And how some bozo years ago came up with the idea of putting the single story retail there. Well, hell, why didn't we ask Costco if they wanted to set up shop there? Why didn't we ask what was the other one? Trader Joe's, if they wanted to set up shop there. I mean, hell, why not? Put them there. And the other thing, you know, the Urban Orchard Park, which is two city parks that we have in the M2 and M3 zone. Well, why didn't they just put the Engel truck storage where Urban Orchard Park is? I mean, it's zoned for that use. You could, and plus the city owns the land. The city could have capitalized on the revenue by charging Engel to make use of that land for his truck storage at that location. Thank you, sir. I'll end with that.
Thank you.
We have no other.
Do we have any emails?
No emails.
Thank you. This time I'll open it up to my colleagues. Do you have any questions?
I have quite a few. I don't know if you guys want to start.
Go ahead.
All right. So going back to the housing part, just to clarify about the voucher situation, am I understanding correctly that although we are allocated, let me see, this is page 11, 671 vouchers, because of the funding and the cost of rent, we only give out 383?
Currently, we have 383 units that are being leased. We still have room for a little more, but
So it's a shortage of units then. That is the
it is
problem.
it is a combination. Last year, unfortunately, we had a shortfall in regards to the budget. We didn't have enough money to cover all the rents. So, but like I said, the rents have been increasing drastically every year. And then also HUD makes sure to give us certain payment standards so we can cover the units up to that payment standard that we're required to pay.
So I heard on the news that LA County opened registration for public housing waiting list.
Mhm.
How does that work? Are we kind of our own entity when it comes to Section 8, or are we working in conjunction with the county?
So we do some coordination with the county and other housing authorities, but each housing authority is independent. There are certain housing authorities that this year receive a higher amount of funding, but as you can see, the housing authority of the city of Southgate is a very small housing authority. The city of LA has way over 20,000 vouchers compared to the 671 that we have.
Got it. And going back to the, just to clarify, you also spoke about the Fair Housing Department. So that's not necessarily an in-house department, right? It's an organization that we sub out to.
What was the name of the?
The Fair Housing, when you spoke about fair housing and the programs that are provided, like the workshops,
Yes.
assistance to renters.
Yes, Fair Housing. We work with the Fair Housing Foundation. They are based in Long Beach, And so some of the CDBG money is allocated to pay for their services. They also help us with the Section 8 program. When there is any discrimination, they go and do investigations. But they are an independent agency. And so if we need any services for housing, we can refer tenants or landlords to them.
And that's what they specialize in, right? Because I know in Huntington Park, they use the same
Yes.
foundation. And then when it comes to, yeah, that's it for housing. Thank you so much. Sure. When it comes to the Gateway District Plan, I was looking at our city website under the environmental documents section, which kind of keeps track of a lot of the projects that are undergoing development. I know that before we had a section for that, I believed it was related to, or writing related to that. I know that an EIR was in the works. Is that what you're talking about when it comes to getting funding to get that restarted? The environmental impact report?
Yeah, we know there was an EIR that was being worked on before, but we're not approaching this plan as a specific plan. It would be a lesser document. One of the things that we realized is that there's actually really good zoning in place for that area that's called the Transit Village Zone, and most of the properties there are zoned that. And what the specific plan that was being worked on in 2019 did was not a lot of changes to that where I don't know if it really required the effort of an environmental impact report, right? Because it was going to rely on the existing zoning standards that already exist there, right? So the underlying zone allows for a lot. It allows for, I think, up to like 8-story buildings in that area. That's more geared towards a transit-oriented type development, right? So our general plan that was adopted in 2015 already allowed for that type of development. And so what we envision with the area plan, it's going to have like new updates to the development standards that we think it's going to make it conducive to be able to build housing and mixed-use developments.
So I see that, but I know the reason I've kind of been following that project was because of the warehouse square foot limit. I believe that was going to be attached to that report, right? So is it kind of be sectioned out now, or is that something that the city is still trying to follow? Or
Yeah, I know the city at one point was going to revisit, the limitation. Right now, there's a 15,000 square
15.
foot limitation on warehousing in the city. It can't be bigger than 15,000 square feet, right? And so that limitation currently exists. It can't be anything larger than that for new development. So I don't remember that being tied into the EIR that was being considered for the Gateway District specific plan.
I thought it was. But
Okay, but right now there's nothing being considered about like allowing for larger warehouses beyond the 15,000 square foot limit right now. And right now warehousing, to my knowledge, and if you know, John, I don't think it's permitted in the Transit Village zone, to my knowledge, right?
it's adjacent to it. I think that the area that they were looking at was on the other side of Atlantic and Pitata.
Probably a little bit more eastward where Merck is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this area is not going to cover to that full area.
And so as far as economic development, yeah, it's sad to see that we don't have any specific department that's dedicated to that. I think it's great that you all are looking into it. How long has it been going on, the working group?
Well, the working group just started last month,
Oh.
right? So it's a way to be able to work across the different departments. But the efforts that we've kind of listed, that's been going on throughout the year, right? So that's ongoing. Our admin team, and Jay Gray, who couldn't be here today, he's our management analyst that is really leading that effort, and he's really leading the effort in terms of outreach to all those individual businesses and developing those relationships that aren't currently here in the Southgate city today.
And that's good to hear. So is he the one leading the group, or is it a particular department head?
Yeah, he's kind of like the one facilitating all of that. So the intention of that work group is to meet quarterly, develop some goals, and I think a lot of that's going to be presented back to Planning Commission and the City Council.
Yeah, I think when you were asking about business ideas, I think something that might benefit the city is maybe a Lowe's. I often have to go pretty far to do that, and considering that Home Depot isn't too far away in Downey, I feel like Lowe's would probably attract their residents, and even myself, who I think the closest one to us is in Pico Rivera. So I think that might be something good to see if we could bring over and have something closer to our region. But I think it's great that you guys are having one, and hopefully that's a department that we can more adequately fund someday. And it's great to hear the progress on the Resiliency Center. I think that's really great. And you mentioned the Lineage fire, but we have had a couple of smaller fires, but with the same health concerns. We had the fire in the Holladale area not too long ago, and I have family that lives in the area, and people were freaked out, not knowing how long or what the health effects were. So I think it would be great. And I was lucky enough to participate in some of the discussions related to that. And there are so many good ideas, and there's so much potential for something like that. And it's really good to see that at least there's a vision for that underutilized part of our city civic center. And as far as streamlining departments, how easy is it for you guys to do? Has that been a challenge? Is it something that has to go through the union for approval?
By streamlining that I referenced earlier, it's more about streamlining processes, not necessarily like staffing and
description.
streamlining.
Oh, okay.
So more of that is like, how do we deliver service better? Is there a better way to do the service that takes less time, reduces the process somehow? Do we use technology more effectively? So a couple of things that we've been working on that have kind of been slowed down a little bit recently is trying to move towards digital signatures, right? So if you have to pull a permit, you still have to come in and do your signatures here at City Hall. So if other cities have moved to digital signatures where you can do that from home, like why don't we do that? And so it takes some time and work to configure all that and make sure that it works. But people are able to do that because they have the time to be able to focus on that. So we'd like to get to that. That's an example of it, digital signatures. The other is to make things more online for building permits. So it shouldn't require you to have to come to City Hall. Like my goal would be is that you have your option if you want to come to City Hall. But if you don't want to come to City Hall and you want to do this entirely online, that there should be a process to be able to do that. You make your payments, provide your signatures without having to come to City Hall. So those are some of our goals, but it's going to take time.
Yeah, no, that's good. As somebody who's managed projects, it's always easier to just have that ability to even pay online, because time is money, and it costs for everybody from the staff working on the project to the owner. So it's a great thing to facilitate for the public. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, in regards to the opportunity zone, right? Very familiar with what the Big Beautiful Bill has done for many things. Healthcare, one of them. But my concern with this is the areas that we can have as the opportunity zones. Displacement and gentrification is a concern for me, right? because as investor, private investor, I would say real estate versus operating businesses, right? So then what protections would be put in place to make sure that the people, the community who already work and live there aren't pushed out by the, let's just say they build this fancy building homes, right? And then everything around that area starts to go up. And then you start to push the people out that live there, which is gentrification. So I'm just a little concerned that the affordable housing won't be something in Southgate anymore because you're giving these billionaires an incentive, tax breaks to bring certain businesses into our community. They reap the benefits, and what happens to the people of Southgate? So
Yeah, those are really good comments and definitely things that we should be concerned about for the city. You know, I'm not sure, like you guys would have more of experience than I have in terms of what are the impacts of gentrification today. Like I would say that maybe they're not significant, right? But does it mean that that wouldn't be happening in the future, right? So I think there's been a few things, and I think the discussions happened in the city in the past, at least that I followed, where the city put certain protections in place. So one of the areas that we talked about, like the Gateway District. So the fortunate part about where that's located is that it's not in a place where there's already existing, at least the boundaries where there's existing homes, right? It would be the redevelopment of existing heavy industrial areas that would provide for housing. But what the city was able to do, I think 5 years ago, was to establish a inclusionary housing ordinance where the city did not have one before. So if there's going to be development in that area, okay, it may not affect existing housing stock there because there's no housing there. But if there is new housing, if it's all market rate, that can put pressure on other neighborhoods throughout the city, right? Because you know, might bring a lot of, you know, only high income earners that can afford market rate housing. So what the city did, I thought was pretty smart, and it created the inclusionary housing ordinance, which requires 10% of all the residential units that would be proposed to be affordable, right? Now that's not 100%, it's not 50%, but it is a certain percentage that requires that to be affordable housing instead of just being market rate housing. And it's probably going to take other efforts that we need to think about how to avoid that. I think the best area I think would be for the opportunity zone is probably the Firestone Station, because it's not going to require potential, demolition of existing housing, right? It would be new housing that doesn't already exist there, and then it would replace heavy industrial type uses that aren't necessarily the best, like for the city, right? It leads to a lot of truck traffic, air quality impacts, and it may require us to think about the other benefits that new development would have for the city. So one of the things that we were looking at recently that I've been looking at is like, well, what are other cities doing around this, right? So the Gateway District, how is that going to, like we actually during our community meetings had concerns about, oh, well, what's that, all that development, is it going to create gentrification in the city? Well, how do we build in components to those projects to make sure that it has benefits for Southgate? So one example I saw recently in Oakland is that they started implementing rooftop gardens, right? And what they do is they harvest everything, and then that goes back into the community. So they would harvest just on one roof 20,000 pounds of produce, but that was going to benefit the local community that didn't live in that development, and that was maintained by a nonprofit organization. So what if we could just have a whole series of rooftop gardens that could be used to help improve food security for Southgate residents here? So it's about also being smart on these plans. So you're going to see these plans in the future, right? You're going to have the ability to be able to make those arguments, and then also think creatively about how can we ensure the development standards are created in a way that benefits all citizens or all residents of the city of Southgate. And that's up to us to think about that too. And it's good that you bring that up because that's going to mean that that's top of mind for us when we're developing these plans for the city. So sorry, a little bit long-winded, but hopefully
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
and because it's also, part of the if I was a billionaire, I would say, hey, I'm going to create jobs in your community so people can work, have jobs. Well, will you really hire people from the community? What type of jobs are you bringing, right? Is it something that our community would truly benefit from? So just wanted to put that thought there. I'm sure you already thought about it, but it's something that really concerns me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's something to think about, right? So the Gateway District, when you have transit-oriented development, is it going to be these big chain stores or is it going to support small businesses that are locally grown in the city? And then how do we do that? So yeah, I think those are questions that definitely ask when we take these plans in front of the Planning Commission.
I have a question, and this question is for Carol. Carol, so you talked about programs that did not move forward. Do we know why? And then you also talked about a carryover. Is that funding still available to us?
We allocated that funding through the annual action plan for this fiscal year. So sometimes there are programs. We had one organization that decided to withdraw their application because they were looking for other funding sources and they were not able to get those funds. So just with CDBG alone, they couldn't move on with their program. And actually, the agency decided to close. It is unfortunate, but sometimes happens. And with this economy, it's really difficult for agencies to get other funding sources.
So it's just something that fell through?
It's something that, fell through, and then, we don't want to lose those funds, so we carry it over for the following fiscal year.
So that was my other question. The funds are still available for use?
Yes.
Yeah. And then my other question was the waiting list for Section 8. You mentioned there's 1,000 people on the waiting list. Is that just for Southgate? And then also, how does that work when there is housing available? Is it just in Southgate, or are we housing the applicants in different areas?
So usually the funds that we receive is for to house them here in Southgate. They're required to be here in Southgate or find a unit. Unless they want to move to a different location, then there is a process that we call it port out. So then they go to a different housing authority, and we work with the housing authority because some housing authorities may choose to bill for the rent and for the administrative fees. And so then we have to pay that housing authority. Or some other housing authorities may choose to absorb that voucher. And so then they just move, and then we have the other vouchers available for other tenants.
Thank you.
Sure.
And actually, my next question, not sure what division this question would be for, but it's considering, have we considered rent control? So I'm not sure what division that would be, but there's a lot of things on here, but I didn't see anything on rent control. Would that be a goal of ours at some point?
If I could, there is already a statewide rent control law in place that landlords in Southgate have to comply with. And it limits annual rent increases to, it's a formula of 5% plus a certain CPI adjustment. So even without a city rent control ordinance, all the landlords in Southgate, many of the landlords in Southgate are subject to that state law.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
When you say many, what are the limitations?
There's exceptions for if you own a single family home and you're renting that, unless the owner is a corporation or a limited liability company that has a corporate manager, most mom and pop landlords are exempt from that kind of thing. But large industrial, companies that are in the business of renting, apartment companies, they're going to be subject to it. So that's is primarily the main exception.
Are these available resources that we have on our website? I feel a lot of people don't know about this. I see this a lot on on social media posts here in Southgate where they'll say like their landlord just raised the rent like $300 and they don't know what to do.
It's a state law that people forgot about it because it started right before COVID hit. But it's the Tenant Protection Act of 2019. And it's both a rent control law and an eviction control law. So you can find it out there if you Google that Tenant Protection Act of 2019.
I don't see it online on the fair housing section at least. Maybe it would be good to
Yeah, we can add it. And actually, a lot of landlords do contact our housing division, and we provide the information to them on how much they can increase the rent on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think that's a great resource and good to have it out. A lot of people I feel don't know that. I didn't know that. I thought we didn't have that in our city.
Yeah, no, we do receive a lot of calls.
because it's kind of complicated too. It's an equation that depends on CPI, right?
Yes.
Like that. So it's not easy to, unless you know, it's not easy to calculate.
It is I think it's 8% plus CPI or 10%, whichever is higher,
Yeah.
or whichever is lower, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then this question that I have, I don't know, John or Gabe, maybe you can help me. On the development projects, I know the caller talked about the drive-through. Is there a limitation or time allowed for development on some of these projects that there was a specific one with the drive-through?
So with the planning commission approval, that was good for 1 year on there for the conditional use permit for the drive-through. From what I understand, I haven't heard anything back from the applicant. I know that when we brought it to the planning commission, it was a speculative building, so they were working to find a tenant in there, and we may have, talked to maybe a few, but I don't know for sure if they'd actually found a tenant there. I'm not aware of any.
So what happens after the year? They'd have to reapply, or how does that work?
They would have to, yeah. Generally speaking, I mean, if they're making good faith to progress with their permit and they've gotten quite a bit, along, we can have the exception there though. But generally speaking, the permit is good for 1 year.
Yeah, because it looks like it was approved in January, so coming up. Thank you.
My question is on the Economic Development Division that you talked about, the opportunity zone, asked to the governor. What did you mean? And if you can explain a little bit about that public comment, like what does that mean? Like when you're saying you're on the waiting list or something, or what was the ask?
Yeah, let's see if I can explain it. Little complicated, right? So the federal government through HUD makes this program available, opportunity zones, right? So it identifies what census tracts could qualify, and these are usually underserved tracts, meaning based on like income and educational attainment, so on. So the target of that program is to attract more investment into those areas that might need it, like more. And then there's a certain amount of census tracts that can be nominated from the state of California. I don't know what the number is, but it's so not all census tracts that are considered eligible. So we were given a list of eligible tracts in the city, and then we nominated 5 of those tracts. Right? We nominated those tracts to GoBiz with the governor's office. They review that, and then they make recommendations on what they feel would be best served as being opportunity zones in the city. We didn't end up making that cut, right? And so there is a printed list. We could probably share that with the Planning Commission because there's an interactive map that shows you all the census tracts that were being recommended by the governor. And that's the opportunity to be able to comment on those census tracts, even the ones that weren't recommended by the governor. What's going to happen after the comment period that ends next week? I think it's the end of this month. The governor is going to make his final recommendations to the federal government, and then those are going to be selected by the end of this year. And then those are going to go into effect in early 2027, and they'll be in effect for 10 years. And so then you're going to have these opportunity funds that are receive investments from people that are trying to minimize their capital gains to be able to make those investments in those targeted census tracts. So if there's no designated census tracts for that as an opportunity zone in the city, I guess we would lose the opportunity to have that investment that otherwise wouldn't come into the city. And that's what the Opportunity Zone program really allows for.
Thank you. You said it's GoBiz? GoBiz?
GoBiz is the state agency
Got it.
that's receiving the comments. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for this presentation. It was very helpful.
Yeah.
I may have more questions later.
Of course. Even after here, if you want to email me, happy to help.
I had another question I forgot to ask related to the brownfields funding and development. I know that I think it was Sandra who was heading the program. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't mentioned here, but what is the status of any of those redevelopment
Yeah.
ideas?
So we are still working on that grant, which is doing some focus studies on all those brownfield sites. Yeah, we didn't mention it. There's a lot going on in the department, right? So we had to be selective what we could present, or we'll be here all night, right? So so that's one thing the city's been doing. Obviously, we have a lot of properties that have been contaminated, like in the past, due to some of the industries that have existed. But I think the city has been proactive in seeking grant funding to be able to help clean up those sites. So hopefully they could be sites that provide hopefully future jobs or sales tax in the future. But right now we're still going through that process. I don't have a good update on where we're at right now because Sandra's been out for a little while. So she has the best update on that. So that's why, otherwise I would have probably had some numbers for you today.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Are we ready to move forward to receive and file? Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion to receive and file.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Valenzuela,
Yes.
Chairperson Prieto.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to comments. Do the members of the audience have any comments? Seeing none, I'll move on to city staff comments.
Oh, I do have just a few things.
Hold on, John. I forgot about Zoom. Do we
have-
have anyone on Zoom?
We have Mr. Mario Dominguez.
Go ahead.
So this is the reason why I missed Cudahy City Council meetings, for this opportunity to say to the commissioners, you people fucked up. You really fucked up at the last Plan Commission meeting with the hops and barley ale house, with approving the industrial materials to be used for the construction of that patio. Commissioner, this isn't why we put you on this commission. We put you on this commission to fix our city, to elevate our city, and to drag these fucking businesses in our city towards bettering themselves. I don't see how using industrial materials to build a patio on Treaty Boulevard is making our city better. And the thing I want to say to the commissioners, if you are uncertain on how to vote on a particular item, you always have the option to say, I abstain. The only time be it a council member or a commissioner, should ever abstain from an item. Two reasons. One, if it's a conflict of interest and you got to recuse yourself, well, then you just recuse yourself, right? You don't vote on the thing. But to abstain is if you really don't know how to vote on an item. If you don't know whether to vote yes or vote no, that's really the only time when you're supposed to say I abstain. But apart from that, you generally really should vote on all items that come before you. And in the case of the hops, barley, and ale house, to me, that was a no-brainer. Of course, you vote to go with staff's recommendation, which was to use the high-grade materials. And I hope we don't have these sort of fuck-ups going forward with our commissioners. I mean, you should have the always aiming to take our city to new heights and to better itself. The thing I want to say to the director, this is why we need that call-up. Where you're trying to implement the call-up feature where council members can call up an item if they don't like the decision rendered by our planning commissioners. So I think this is an excellent reason why that call-up feature needs to be implemented. And the thing that I want to say to Mr. Perez, you said how the commissioners are clueless when it comes to administrative decisions that the director makes. Well, I think the way you address that is right here during the planning commission when it comes time for the director comments. That is precisely when you should state the administrative decisions that you have made as the director of community development during the director comments in our planning commission meetings. That's an excellent opportunity to lay out what decisions you've rendered on these city matters. I'll end with that.
Thank you.
We have no other.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that we did fill a position this month. We filled the assistant planner position that was vacated a couple of months ago by our previous assistant planner. Our new planner, Zoe Ortiz, started at the beginning of this month in August, and I believe it's her third week. So she's picking up well, and we do have high hopes for her. So hopefully at some point she can come to the planning commission and make a presentation on the project. So hopefully you can see her at some point soon. And I also wanted to report that you noticed that we only have 4 commissioners here tonight. Mr. Ozeda filed his papers to run for council, and according to our policies or our requirements here, our rules here at the city, that when you file, that you can no longer can serve on a commission. And so that's why we have 4 commissioners for now. And I'll let you know if it gets filled at some point in the future. That's all.
Thank you. I'll open it up to my colleagues. Any questions, concerns, comments?
No, I just want to thank you all for all the hard work you all do, and just, it's exemplary. I know it's not an easy time to be here, but your hard work is definitely seen and recognized.
Anyone else? I echo what Liz just said. I want to thank staff for the presentations. It was a wealth of information. So thank you very much for putting all that together. I know that despite our budget constraints, we do thank you for all your hard work, dedication to our city. Thank you. And thank you for you being here, and thank you for joining us tonight. And since there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and adjourn. 9:06.